My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. I'm only here to even the score. Whoa. My mind is set, my grind is set, my heart on ice cold. We down right now, but did it before. Whoa. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up. See from here we going up. Made the call, I shown up. Now the game is sewn up. Say my name is blown up. We up, 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 we up.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the United Ones podcast, episode number 44. That's 44. We are the only podcast that features a UCF National Champion, a former UCF radio host, an ESPN analyst and hoops player, an infamous, yes, infamous rapper, our resident influencer, and IG star shooting the breeze talking UCF Sports. Remember to like, follow us on YouTube, IG, and check out the 70-plus teams and conferences on the I did it again. College Huddle Network. It's just so easy to merge those two things together. But you'll find our content on there. You'll find other Big 12 content, the Big 12 show. We participate on that. So make sure you're checking that out as well. All right. So for this week, we've got a couple of we got to pour one out for the shorties that aren't making it to the show this week. Josh Lazar is eating ice cream. That is his excuse for not making the show this week. Unfortunately, we will also be without Ben Stout. However, you do have the remaining crew. So we got Alan back from Europe when he managed not to get arrested and stay over there. But we've also got Trey Neal back. So excited about that. This week we're going to be talking a little bit of UCF football recruiting. We've got the transfer portal that giveth some 4 stars and taketh some 4 stars away. So we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about UCF basketball. So a little change in how, you get access to basketball games now that we've stepped up to the Big 12. We're big time in it. We're also going to be talking a little bit about Mustapha Team, who's on the floor for us and practicing and what he looks like. And then the board of trustees had a lot of announcements this week. We talked a little bit about a new deal with Coke. So Coke deal, we had, some information about our budget, where we stand. We understand what we're going to be earning, and we're going to be talking a lot of different things there. And then, of course, Alan will be giving us his oxymoronic fact of the week. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring on the crew. First to the stage, Trey Neal.
Hey, Roger, what's up, man? How you doing?
Glad to have you back after that Father's Day dinner. I hope you were not paying. Breaking news. Roger likes to cuddle, according to Alan. So with that being said, let's go ahead and bring on the other spoon. Alan, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on?
Welcome back from Europe, man. How'd you make it out alive?
I made it out alive, ate a lot of food, and happy to be back. Feels like I haven't been on the show in a while, so excited to be back.
Yeah, you haven't, but that's okay. We're glad that you're back. Glad that you got to enjoy my home continent and got lots of food because there's plenty to eat over there. All right, let's get started. Let's talk a little transfer portal this week. The transfer portal giveth and it takes away. So, Alan, why don't you tell us a little bit about Rakeem Stroud, one of the Giveth players?
I think you mean recruit, not or high school recruit, not transfer. But so we got what was that?
You're right.
Yeah. No, just wanted to clarify. But so UCF landed their 10th verbal commitment of the 2025 class. Comes at a good time. It's DB out of Tampa Bay Tech. His name is Rakeem Stroud, as you mentioned. 3-star recruit, depending on, what outlet you look at. I personally use 247 composite, but he's ranked as a 3-star in every outlet besides Rivals, where he's listed as a 4-star. A little bit of a smaller guy, as a junior, someone that's going to have to grow into his body. He's 5'11", 160 pounds. So pretty light dude, but he comes from Tampa Bay Tech, which is actually his teammates with another UCF commit in the 25 class, wide receiver Santonio Holmes. So it feels like a little bit more we're starting to build the Tampa pipeline. I think, during the Gus era, there hasn't been a ton of Tampa players. It's been more, Central Florida and a little bit of South Florida. So it is nice to do that. And Tampa Bay Tech, for, any high school football lovers, they're a pretty good program. They actually compete in the same district as Armwood, which is generally a powerhouse in high school football, where former UCF safety Kyle Gibson went to school, and I believe he actually coaches there now. And Tampa Bay Tech they actually finished first in the district standings over Armwood with a 10-3 record. So really good program, great program to have a pipeline to. Now we have 2 guys in this class. But back to Stroud, he was originally committed to Wisconsin, verbally committed, and literally he took an unofficial visit to UCF last year when he was a sophomore. And then UCF literally offered him yesterday, at least officially on the recruiting outlets. And he committed to UCF, or flipped to UCF that day, decommitting from Wisconsin. So it was nice to get a flip from a Big Ten school, someone that Wisconsin was pretty high on. So, I think it's a good addition to the class. And I don't know if you guys mentioned this last week, but it comes at a time when, DeMarcus Gardner, a DB that was in our class, unfortunately flipped to Kentucky. So being able to, regain a member of the secondary was a big, part of this decision. I think why Gus went ahead and quickly made an offer to someone that was clearly interested in coming to UCF. He said it was a business decision, and he talked about how it was wanted to play closer to home, play in front of his family. So I think it's a really good addition to class. Obviously, we're still pretty far away from the 25 signing day, but it is good that we're able to recover from losing Gardner, who was one of our highest rated recruits in the 25 class to date. And also, it did move UCF's class down. We, for a while, we had been in the top 20. We're now number 49. Obviously, that's going to shuffle a lot in the coming months. But, getting Stroud obviously helps the cause.
Well, and I think, when we were talking about recruiting, the average recruiting ranking, we're still up there,
Correct.
right? So it's just, there's a lot of schools in this past week that have signed a lot of players. And so the number of players for us, is still lower than a lot of those other teams, but the quality is still ranks up there. So, one of the things I'll say about him too, this is still a top 100 recruit in Florida. So if you've got a top 100 recruit in Florida, it's the top echelon of the recruits in the state of Florida. And that says a lot. He had 21 P4 offers. We say P4 right now. It'll be P3 soon. But, at the end of the day, this is still in line with a lot of those recruits that we were talking about earlier. And I feel like you mentioned he's a little lightweight, and he is. And, according to Trey, we give high school teams give them 2 inches and 15 pounds. So I think he's more realistically, he is around 160 pounds after having seen him play. But he's going to fill out. He's also young. And what I mean by that is he's younger than what the average recruit is at his age in his class. He's actually, I don't know if it was based on his date of birth, like he was born close to when school started or whatever, but he will fill out quite a bit, especially in a if he gets into a strength and conditioning program. 5'11" is good height. He's got good speed. And from his tape, he looks pretty solid from his high school tape, but he's going to fill out quite a bit, and I expect big things from him.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Absolutely.
the guy that used to be at Wisconsin, Coach Coop, I call him Jack, but he's actually coaching. I think he's like a defensive analyst at Wisconsin. So, and I trust the way he evaluates talent, especially the back end guys. So I think he's a good player. I haven't watched any tape, but again, if he was committed to Wisconsin and they want him, I'm sure he's a very good football player just because I know one of the guys there.
Well, and Luke Fickell's there now too.
Yeah, and he's a great evaluator.
Great eye for defensive talent, right? So that's kind of what he's known for. He's a defensive-minded coach, and he's known for that. So if Luke Fickell wanted him, and it seems like honestly, the Wisconsin fans, there was a lot of noise out there by Wisconsin fans. They were pretty upset about losing him, and it's interesting that we've lost recruits who wanted to stay home in the past, but now we gain one that really wanted to stay home. And according to people that are around the program, he's kind of been waiting on a offer from us, and it's nice to pick up someone like that. So yeah, he's rated on 247 and on the composite as a 3-star, but I think the only reason for that is because he's a little 160 pounds. As far as how he plays bigger than he is. He's got good speed. I think he'll grow into that frame. So I think overall it's a good pickup, and it's also solid that we were able to fill that cornerback position that quickly, especially with someone that's close to home. I love the fact that you mentioned Tampa Bay Tech in the same vein as Armwood. I don't think a lot of UCF fans. Everybody knows Armwood. Everybody knows IMG. But Tampa Bay Tech in the Tampa Bay area, which produces some really good football players, that's a pretty good pipeline to open up with regard to high school. So all in all, I think this is a significant positive for us. Unfortunately, at the same time, as you mentioned, we lost DeMarcus Gardner. So that was interesting that we lost him to Kentucky, especially like that. I'm guessing he wanted to go SEC. I'm guessing they threw a bag at him. From the scuttlebutt in college football, Kentucky actually has surprisingly one of the higher NIL budgets. So they're kind of one of those sneaky NIL budget type of schools, right? That, Ole Miss has a lot of money as well. That you don't think about, right? Because they're not Florida, they're not Miami, they're not Georgia, not Alabama, but Alabama actually doesn't have as robust an NIL program as you think. A lot of that was people going there to get the NFL. And Kentucky, though, of those schools in the SEC is in the higher tier of NIL programs. So they're spending a lot of money, and the last couple years, they've actually been upgrading their roster pretty significantly and have been doing a lot better in the SEC as a result of that. So Kentucky's not the Kentucky of old. Well, Kentucky's always known for basketball. They've been able to spend on basketball, but they're spending on football now. Would have rather have kept DeMarcus Gardner, but depending on who you talk to and what you read, ultimately Stroud may be a better cornerback and defensive back than what DeMarcus Gardner is. So very interesting there. You also mentioned in your notes that Kendarius Reddick is also rumored to potentially be flipping to USC. I've heard that that's a rumor, but just a rumor that he's pretty much going to be sticking. I mean, USC is hard to turn down. Don't get me wrong. They're going to throw. Huh?
I said he got an offer from them.
Well, yeah, he got an offer, but more importantly with USC, and I think he visited it as well. I think more importantly with USC is, the bag that they're going to be able to throw at him. And this is really, do you want to go all the way to the West Coast to go play for USC? I mean, they'll be playing in the Big Ten. They're a storied program. They're the premier West Coast program and have been for a really long time. So there's a lot of positives there, and they throw a lot of money there. I mean, we remember what the scandals were like in recruiting for USC in the past with some Heisman Trophy winners getting stripped initially, but now they've got them back. And, they were saying, hey, we got downtown apartments and BMWs and Lambos and $100,000 in spending cash. So that was back in the 90s. So you know what I mean? That's what you're dealing with USC. But it's really, I think, going to come down to whether he wants to stay in Florida or go out to the West Coast. And I will say this: things that I'm hearing is, he has that rumor of potentially flipping, but good chance of him staying home. So we'll see how much the dollar bills are worth to him and how big of a McDonald's bag he needs to get. Because UCF right now, their NIL bag, we're starting to Biggie size certain meals. Let's just put it that way. That McDonald's bag is getting a little bit bigger. So I think we're competitive, but obviously we can't throw around money like USC just yet. All right. Other news. Let's go ahead and pivot. Wow,
Pivot.
nobody's doing it. Thank you. Let's try that again. Let's go ahead and pivot.
Pivot.
All right. Thank you. Alan's still a little slow on the uptake. I think he's jet lagged or something. I don't know what's going on. But so, UCF, I don't know if you guys checked your inboxes today, but UCF sent out an email for a Big 12 all access pass. This is a sign that we're entering into the big boy territory, folks. And a lot of this episode really is going to be around who UCF is in relative to college football. And there's a basketball championship all access pass. So it's basically a membership program hosted by the Big 12 at the men's basketball championship tournament. And basically you can lock down your rights to have certain seating for a fee. And so now UCF is participating in that as well. And depending on how much you're willing to put down, it locks it down, I think, for 10 or 20 years. Alan, did you have any more details on that?
No, I thought that was I did not have any more details on that. Sorry.
Alan with the truth bombs there. So yeah, basically, at the end of the day, they're promoting a Big 12 all access pass so that you can lock down your seats at the championship for the next 10 to 20 years. Prices, depending on where you want to sit, is $1,200 to $5,000. You can lock down.
This is if UCF gets in, or you could go to any Big 12 champions regardless of the team that's in it.
Regardless of the team that's in it, right? So you're just basically locking down the right for the next 10 or 20 years or whatever for a fee to have basically the right to buy a ticket. So a lot of, mature.
What?
Yeah. So think about it this way. A lot of mature programs, and this is why for UCF fans, those priority points that we've been accumulating, if you're a season ticket holder, become important, because as we start to fill out these arenas, right? And Josh was a great example of this last year, where he was selling tickets to like Oklahoma fans and everybody else for a premium, right? It becomes a trade all in itself. If you've got, if you've got tickets at the Shoe for Ohio State, they actually, or LSU, they pass those rights generationally when people die. So basically the right to pay the premium to buy the ticket in those seats, if you're in mature programs like that, basketball programs, Kentucky's that way, Notre Dame's that way. There's a lot of different programs. Kansas is that way. You basically pay money to have the right to buy those tickets or buy those seats if they're premium seats. So they're starting that process now with the Big 12 tournament, which is interesting, based on the participation on it. You can either buy the right to be able to sit courtside on floor seats. You can buy the right for lower bowl. You can buy the right for what club to buy purchase. But you got to remember, this is a UCF perspective that we're applying to the Big 12 championship game. There's a lot of teams that fill their stadiums, right? Or fill their arenas. And I mean, if you ever watch even students trying to get tickets for Kansas basketball, they will camp out 3 or 4 days beforehand for the right to buy tickets to get into the game, right? So UCF used to have those long lines for the, for the students to get into our football games, right? Now imagine having kids camp out for 3 or 4 days, and that's passed on to donors later on. They pay that premium, and so this is a harbinger of things to come for UCF and especially basketball. And this should tell you how serious of a league the Big 12 basketball conference is. So we're big time in basketball. Another thing I kind of wanted to talk about was Mustapha Tiem. He is the 7-footer, the 2025 guy who reclassified for us, our first 5-star. He's actually practicing, right? So he's on UCF's practice courts. I was watching some footage of him. If you guys remember Taco Fall, he was super tall, right? And they actually, when he first came here, he could only be on the court for a few minutes at a time, right? Mm-hmm. And they had to build up his ability to stay on the court, his wind basically. And he still, even like his senior season, his last season with us, would take the ball, catch the ball, dribble it, or bring it down low, which for someone that tall, you don't want them doing it, right? And that's because they can't dribble very well and they're not very nimble. I was watching this kid in this practice video. He plays like a tall forward. Like, he is that nimble, flexible. His game is developed. He's got sky hooks, but his footwork is excellent. He's just way more athletic and uses his body way better than just standing under the rim and swatting people, right? Which is what you would expect from someone that tall and that big, especially at that age. This kid can play, and he's got not just the defensive aspect of it, but he's also got the offensive aspect of it. So I'm expecting a lot of big things. There's a reason why this kid's a 5-star recruit. And I'm telling you right now, he's still going to develop. He's still, tall, skinny. He's going to benefit from a weight training program. But even then, he's not uncoordinated. He can handle the rock. His footwork's solid. He's got offensive game outside of the, outside of the 3-second circle. He can move. He pushes. He pushes guys. He gets low when he needs to. And he can dunk, not just because he's got a little hop, because he's only got like 2.5 feet to jump to be able to dunk the ball. This kid's got some hops. So way more athletic than Taco Fall or what you've seen in the past from bigs at UCF. Way more athletic than Ben ever was. Sorry, Ben, had to get that in there. But I'm really, really impressed with not just his ability to defend, but also his ability to move with an offense that flows. So, he's going to be real exciting to watch, and I expect that guy to make it to the NBA, probably not like a one and done, but maybe because he's still young and needs to develop. But I expect him to make it in 2 to 3 years. So that bodes really, really well for what we're trying to do. And by the way, yes, they're still hitting the floor with their hands on defense. I saw him do that as well. So he's getting into the Johnny Dawkins defensive mentality. So kudos to that. Really good first returns as a former basketball player and semi-pro player. Seeing a guy like that move is really, really dangerous. And Lord knows I wouldn't want to play against him.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that's 7 foot athletic is very, you're not gifted with both. You're either really big and kind of clumsy, or you're just too short and very athletic. When you have both, that's what makes most NBA guys. When you're a 7-footer that can move, that can handle, that's not, tripping over his feet, that can rebound, that can, just move with the pace that the game is now. It's not how it used to be, where it's a lot, more back to the basket kind of guys. They want your big men to be skilled. They want your big men to be, almost like you said, Roger, play like forwards, move like forwards. Not necessarily to that elite level, but, the closer you can move like a forward and be 7 foot, the better. So again, I've been saying it. I think he's our starting center. I think that's why we've been getting just guards around him. I think they're just they kind of knew if whatever he needed to get, be able to reclass and come. I think that's what they wanted, was just for that to, he was like the missing piece to what they want to do. And, hopefully we can have what we had last year as far as defensively, but, you add in these uber talented guys into those spots, and that's where you kind of or combine it, and it makes a high quality team. We beat Kansas with, we had a great season, but I wouldn't call those our guys on our team just, Kansas level players. I'll say it like that, like those elite level players. I think, with
let's
Mikey
be real.
Williams,
We threw them together. There's some of those.
Yeah.
Some of our players could have played for them, but we also had some inconsistency in the play as well, right?
And it's not. I think just even the talent pool that Kansas gets every year, them Kentucky, Duke, Carolina, those kind of teams, Houston's are getting those 5-star guys. One or two to actually, some of them are getting 3 to 6 of them every year. So the fact that we have one, but then you consider Mikey, who was a former 5-star, and I forgot his teammate that plays on the wing, that was a 5-star too. Like, you get that, and then if you can put that kind of talent in a Johnny Dawkins mentality of high defense, but also very offensively skilled, I think the sky's the limit. I've been, trying to speak Elite 8 minimum. I text that in the group every once in a while. Elite 18, whatever.
This ain't an Elite 8 team yet, dude. This ain't an Elite 8 team yet. But I'd love to be wrong.
Yeah,
I just think if it all comes together with the talent, it could be a special team. I think it could. I think just on the surface of talent, as far as recruiting stars wise, this is more talented team than that 2018, 2019 team that went to a tip-in of almost beating one of the most talented Duke teams ever. And I think they're more talented than them. I just think, again, it all has to come together perfectly. The guys got to buy in, and we'll see. I think that it could be a special season.
Yeah, it's nice to see. Basketball obviously isn't getting the early returns in recruiting as much as football has. Obviously, there was an instant boost going to the Big 12 that football is seeing, which obviously that's not a surprise that basketball isn't. But even just getting a kid like this who's was considered the number one center, one of the top centers in the nation. But then just in the transfer portals, like kind of like you just said, Trey, like Mikey Williams and Benny Williams and JJ Taylor. These were all former 4-star recruits in high school, and UCF football has always benefited from the portal even before the Big 12 getting these really highly recruited former highly recruited guys. But UCF basketball hadn't. Most of the transfers were kind of unheralded. They've worked out and been, become some of our best players in the last couple of years. But like a guy like, the Keyshawn Hall or the Benny Williams or the Mikey Williams, we weren't getting that in the portal. So it is starting to come together. I've been a pretty, and I don't want to use the word hater, but just someone that I don't have a lot of faith in.
Oh, come on. You've been sipping on that Hater-ade.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of faith in the basketball program as a whole, just as someone that covered the team, watched the team. I just never, and Ben's agreed, and I think most agreed that they just never invested the resources like they did in football, which is understandable, but I never saw any reason why they would turn around, even in the Big 12, just because I just felt and now they are starting to do that. But when you couple that with how hard of a conference it is, I just haven't had a lot of faith, just because it's pretty new what they're doing with the basketball program, making a little bit more of an investment in it. But when you saw just how much the football program changed in the matter of a decade and how much effort they put in, when you compare that to the basketball program, it was such a wide gap. But it does seem now that it's starting to make some moves. I don't know what's going to happen this upcoming season, or really any of the upcoming seasons for that matter, but it does seem like it's starting to, maybe turn a corner a little bit here.
Yeah, I think you are seeing some of the Big 12 effect. I had no doubt that eventually it would trickle down, but my whole thing, and you guys have heard me, talk about our basketball program and what our expectations were before the season. Last season, we overachieved, right? All of our expectations. I was trying to get this in when Ben was talking about this, because we expected 4 wins. That was the highest total in conference that we had predicted, and they exceeded that and could have won more. I do think that part of that, by virtue of being in the Big 12 conference and being in the state of Florida, you're going to see a lift in basketball. With Dawkins at the helm and the performance as of late, and the question, we talked about, we thought that he would get us through the Big 12 transition. And then, we said we thought he'd get a couple-year contract, which he did. That Dawkins isn't the hire for me, like a Kelvin Sampson or somebody who's going to attract those kind of recruits. So getting TM here, it was a huge win. Getting Mikey Williams here was a huge win, right? So it's the Friday Night Lights effect, right? Or the Last Chance U kind of effect from that. But even then, Mikey Williams still had opportunities to go elsewhere. So, I do think there's a little bit of that. And if this team can do well, it can act as a springboard if these pieces come together. I just wouldn't expect them to come together right away year one. What we saw last year with the pieces being put together and plugged into the system was unique. That's not usually how you see basketball being played. Now, all of that being said, back to, the scorers that we're putting around a big defender, we also have another 7-footer right behind TM. And I think the fact, when I see TM move, he moves more like CJ Walker. He has the hops. He has the ability to drive the paint as big as he is. I don't want him ball handling, right? But if he needs to catch a pass, within the free throw line, they can create space for him and he can drive the paint, unlike someone who's less mobile or nimble or whatever. So that opens up a lot of options for you offensively in what you're doing and trying to push people to the arc with the shooters that you have and the point scorers that you have. And if you have a point scoring 5 that can take a one-on-one and do well offensively, that opens up a lot of doors for you. I also think the number of shooters that we have, the number of point scorers that we have, really signals that transition to what Johnny Dawkins wanted all along, which was, a lot of people that you could, rely on their shooting at around 38 to 40%. We've got some 3-point players, and having that defense that's going to be focused on turnovers and running full court press or half court press to score. And that's kind of what we did last year. And that eliminates a lot of that talent gap. So with the guys we have coming in are an upgrade over what we had last year, right? And the fact that, we're still going to have that same mindset, I think that will translate to some wins on the court, and we'll see how that goes. But at the end of the day, we got to stop thinking about us as AAC or Conference USA basketball. There will be more money that's going to be put into basketball as the dollar signs go up for us from a contract perspective on the media dollars. But in the interim, if we can make some noise with these guys that we have, that's for recruiting. People are going to see that they can win and that they do have the highest stage in college basketball. It's like the SEC. Why would someone choose to go to Ole Miss over someone in an ACC program? Or a Big 12 program. It's the platform. You're at the highest level of the sport when you play in the SEC. I would argue even higher level than the Big 10, unless you're playing for Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan.
1,000%.
Right. So, the Big 12 is the equivalent of that. We have that advantage, and we have the state of Florida. And there's a lot of good basketball players that come out of the state of Florida. So we have potential beyond just what we're able to pay. And then we've, talked about recently the donor, the $1 billion donor that we brought in. If we can get him to continue, and our NIL money has been going up, it's higher than OSU's, by the way. That's why OSU lost so many people. We can compete on the NIL front. We've got Florida and the Big 12 as a platform. Look out for UCF basketball. it's going to make some noise. It's just a question of when, not if. All right, let's go ahead. Since we're talking money, let's go ahead and pivot. Thank you. All right, let's talk a little bit about some things that came out of the Board of Trustees meeting and some recent announcements from the athletic department. First off, a deal with Coke. UCF just finished negotiations with Coke for sponsorship. The revenue from the sponsorship from Coke went up from 1.2 million to 1.5 million in the first year and escalates to 1.7 million. Now, why is that important? On average, the Big 12 sponsorships are for teams is 1.3 million. So we're above market as far as that's concerned. We also get commissions on 35% of sales. So anything that you buy at the stadium or at a UCF event, we get 35% of those commissions. So yes, the Coke products are expensive when you go buy them at the football stadium, but take solace that 35% of that goes back to UCF with $300,000 minimum guaranteed in income. They're also giving us all the products for the players. So not only that, UCF's not having to spend the money to have the Coke products, the Powerades and everything else for the players. So any Coke product that they're going to be used or anything that's under the Coke umbrella, they're giving that to UCF for free. So that is about $131,000 annually that we're saving. And they're also doing some professional development opportunities for our student athletes. So they're increasing that as well. And they're giving us $10,000 annually. So basically they're a shareholder member just from that. So great deal for UCF. We're saving a lot of money. We're making more than average. And Coke has been a great partner for us for a long time. I don't know if you guys remember the little stand-up George O'Leary's that had the Coke products and the Coke. This is before your time, Trey. Okay. But George O'Leary, he when he a little bit after he came onto campus, they had these standing George O'Leary paper stand-ups, life-size stand-ups that they would take around campus, and they were all featured with Coke. So Coke's a longtime partner, and it's a little extra money, that's equivalent of about $500,000 to $1 million more extra money going into the athletic department every year. Also, the Board of Trustees announced that the stadium expansion project, the first installment for the debt service was fulfilled for the budget. So that means, the fact we're not just going, but we're actually paying for the new stadium enhancements. And also the $10 million was allocated from the TDT for the expected revenues for the TDT fund that we heard, that of that $88 million that's going to go in there. Compensation, we talk about coaches' compensation went up $2.2 million. So that means on average, we're paying $2.2 million more for this upcoming season than we did last season in coaching compensation. So we've added a lot of coaches, and there's also kickers that go out to coaches based on performance. So let's hope they pay more out next year for that. And lastly, for the first, not lastly, but for the first time, UCF actually is increasing our reserves. We've been running on 0 reserves for a really long time. And I think this is a byproduct. And the reason I want to point this out, UCF, their budget for 2024-2025 is $97 million. UCF was operating in the AAC with about $77 million. So that's at the level where we're expected to receive $19 million in funds from the last year of the contract. And again, that's last year of our half shares. The Big 12 distributed around 30, I think it was 35 million or 38 million. Hold on, I have it here somewhere. To its members. So, and the new contract kicks in, which will be even higher than that. So we're going to go from 19 million with $2.5 million going back to the AAC for our exit fee from $9 million that we were making the AAC to around $42 to $45 million in distributions from the Big 12 conference. We're at $97 million with an $18 million distribution, with part of it going back to the conference. So that means you're going to be over 110, 115 million. UCF, for us to have that level of budget was unheard of back in the day. So this is big time Big 12 football, and puts us in the upper echelon of the mid-tier power conference members, which again helps us build towards where we're going. And we don't have the issues like UNC's AD that came out and said, hey, we're going to have a $30 million shortfall. University, you need to continue to pay us. Or UCLA, which joined the ACC recently and had a shortfall of over $100 million just on their stadium project alone. So UCF's in good financial position, and that's important because it's going to allow us to be nimble as these new things, and we have all this uncertainty going in the NCAA with the players getting paid up to $20 million. We're going to be positioned for that, and a lot of schools aren't. So I feel like, we're talking about what payers will get paid and what they're getting paid right now. As that NIL, it'll still exist, but a lot of it comes into the university. Not everybody's going to be able to pay what we can, and I feel like you're going to see a recruiting bump in 2025, fiscal year 2025 and 2026, which is when that's expected to hit. So it was $34.8 million in conference distributions. And again, that's going to raise based on the TV contract and our share of the playoff money as we go up. Also, $35 million raised this year in donations. That's the highest we've ever had by far, and eclipsed our budget. We also have a future, what they call Pegasus partnership, which is this is like the Orlando Health, the Advent Health, Nemours, Addition Financial, those large donation sponsorships that we're receiving for our athletics program. We have 2 more in the works in the defense and technology industry, 2 more in entertainment, and 3 more in energy. So think about multiple, like essentially doubling the amount of partnerships and income that we're receiving from that. And lastly, last but not least, Kenneth Dixon. If you guys don't know Kenneth Dixon, you should, because he's a big time booster for UCF. Donated $10 million for some of it going to academics, but most of it going to athletics. They're actually going to honorarily rename Orion, the road Orion, after him that we have on campus. I don't know if you guys remember, but $1 million used to be a huge donation. Now we've got $10 million coming in, and Kenneth Dixon and the foundation has contributed a lot more than that. So that's huge boost for us. So when we're talking about basketball, we're talking about getting our facilities done, we're talking about moving those things along. That's what's enabling us to do it. And we've always been one that didn't have the big time donors that have been around, because we haven't been around. It's starting to happen. So the Roths, and now we've got the No Bull owner, and we've got the owner for gosh, I can't remember the other one, for the cryptocurrency coming in. These are all guys with hundreds of millions or billions of dollars that are starting to invest in UCF football. So we are big boy football, big boy basketball, and we're becoming a power conference. And more importantly, we're managing our money well. So as much grief as I give Terry Mohajir, he's done a great job with our budget, and it's going to position us well moving forward. All right. Anything you guys want to add on to that?
I mean, I think it's just
show me the money.
Well, yeah, I mean, show me the money. It's great to, it's like you said, we couldn't fathom this a decade ago or whatever. And we know how much money is a factor in competing in today's college athletics, or, I mean, always was the case, but even more now. And to be able to get to the point where we're going to be making this type of bread is great to see. I mean, UCF has always been a school that's done more with less, and now we're going to be able to do more with more, right? So it's really great to, be able to compete resources wise and financially with, like you said, Roger Frozo, it's not going to be Texas, but Texas money, but to at least be, this is going to be a very competitive budget. We're able to compete financially, and I think it just shows the direction of the program. Like, we've been on the rise now for a decade plus, and that's only going to continue. And those resources are just so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you don't have to be, like you said, the Texas money wise or the A&Ms or big time, but you want to be competitive. You want to be in the realm of what it takes to win a national championship. Ultimately, that's the goal. It's to win a national championship, and I think
is that the goal, or is the goal to get in the SEC or the Big Ten? Because that's my goal.
I'd like to just win a national championship. I'd be fine with winning a national. Yeah, what are you talking about?
I think for the program to survive long term, I would trade. Here's a good question for you: would you trade getting into the SEC or the Big Ten for a national championship in the short term?
No shot.
No shot. Because winning a national championship will help you get into the SEC or the Big Tens most likely. So, yes. I mean, I guess in your hypothetical that doesn't matter, but like, I want the Natty.
A national championship.
We have a real one.
I disagree, but okay.
I know. A national championship, like, it solidifies us forever, in my opinion. Like,
for sure.
And I think that's, at least to me as a competitor, like, obviously I'm not playing now, and obviously I would love to go to the SEC and just compete. But, that's when you can win and it's no disrespect to us, because when you can go into the college football playoff, beat all the teams in front of you, and literally you're the last one standing, no questions, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's something about that is just different. There's something about that. You're standing, how people look at people look at some of these programs now. That's literally all they hold that weight. I mean, before a couple of years where Georgia was winning, people looked at Georgia as an elite premier program for something they did in 1980.
Yeah.
Like, that's how much winning a national championship matters. It matters that much. Because again, truthfully, we can go to the SEC. I don't think we will, but we could go be a Mississippi State. And how great is that, truthfully? How great is it being? I'm not saying we would be, but the possibility is there. I don't think it will happen, but I wouldn't trade being a national champion for being a Mississippi State, a Vanderbilt, Auburn. I wouldn't say Auburn, but like those kind of teetering teams that, I'm in the SEC. That's really all they can sell. I wouldn't trade that for a national championship.
All right, so I'm gonna take a different twist on that, and my twist is the long-term view versus the short-term view. And here's where this is coming from. There was a meeting of the NCAA conferences, a national meeting, right? They met for a week last week somewhere in some location. So imagine this: you are ADs, your presidents, your conference officials, your commissioners, all that stuff. You spend a week together, right? And all of a sudden, one day for 3 hours, the president of the NCAA, Charlie Baker's missing. And all of the now P5, but that goes away here soon, conference commissioners go missing and have their own meeting without you and decide what the future of Division I college football will look like, including Charlie had come out earlier in the year with a plan of separating the P5 conferences into essentially another division. So those conversations were going on at this meeting. Nobody knew about them, and they made decisions. Now, we are Power 5 now, soon to be Power 4. We've said all along that we're going to be Power 3 here pretty soon, right? How long do you think it takes for the Big 12 to be eliminated and become the Power 2?
Why would they eliminate? We talked about like the basketball though. How could you eliminate you can't eliminate Kansas from? But you can absorb
if the long-term play, the whole conversation has been around the Power 2, right?
Right. The Super
I
2.
think that's what ends up happening, truthfully.
Right. So
they
would
take
trade
more teams from the ACC and the Big 12, obviously.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, Kansas, I think, would be out the door pretty quickly to the Big Ten.
Yes.
Let's talk about who else is left. I think West Virginia
Florida
would
State,
be.
Clemson would be in. I mean,
Yeah, but that's the ACC. I'm talking about the Big 12 right now.
Oh.
Who would be left if let's say they're done with their ACC raids, they're making this Power 2 conference. That's going to be the new Division 1. Basically the like what happened to the Pac is the perfect example, right? You still had teams left in the Pac, and they're now fighting for relevance. They literally stopped being a voting member for at least 2 years after this athletic season's over, despite the fact that the Pac-12 technically still exists. There's 2 members. They haven't figured out what they're going to do with the Pac-12, but their voting rights go away.
Right.
So, all right, same thing happens to the ACC, right? Same thing happens, when they get back around to the Big 12. Would you be happy with a national championship and all of a sudden be relegated to essentially what's Division 2?
Wait, I have a question. How does it like destroy? Like if we have like 16 teams or whatever, what is it? 16 teams in the Big 12, 18. Sorry. How can the Big 10 and the SEC just decide that like the Big 12 doesn't count as a conference? Like you just said that 4 or whatever 5 commissioners all made a decision together, but how could these 2 just be like, all right, the Big 12 is no longer a conference, or
the same way they did to the Big East. The exact same way they did the Big East. You say, hey, we took the teams that we wanted. You've got no power teams, true power teams, or Power 2 level teams left in your conference. The next negotiation
is contingent on the Big 12 teams agreeing to leave. Like if we all stuck together, but you're saying if they would choose.
Dude, we said the same thing about the Big East. We said the same thing about everything else.
If any team in the Big 12 is approached by the SEC or Big 10,
gone. Yeah, they're gone.
99% going to leave.
They're gone. So,
which starts the fracture, and then that starts the every man for himself, and that's what essentially happened to the Pac-12. USC and UCLA went to the Big 10, and they're like, well, those are kind of the quote-unquote big dogs. We have to panic. And Oregon ended up leaving. And who was the last team?
Washington.
That went to the Big 10. Yeah, so Washington. Then Utah. So Utah, Arizona. Okay, let's get that's just the
Utah didn't want to leave. They fought it. They fought it the whole time. Yeah, Arizona State fought it the whole time. Like, they didn't want to leave. But, hey, the life raft's gone.
So you're saying if we don't get selected in this hypothetical of not Natty or this – you're saying what UCF's football program would just cease to exist? Like it would be there'd be no UCF football.
No, anymore? What I'm saying is you're going to be relegated. You're relegated. The whole time we've been fighting to move up the ladder, right? And the whole point is to make sure that we are a major college, let's call it football because that's drive sports, right? Football brand, right? And that we have access to a national championship, et cetera, right?
Yep.
So now, you start pulling teams from the Big 12 and the SEC and the Big 10 starts pulling in more revenue dollars, starts pulling in more, hey, we've got better quality teams here. So that's justification for us to have more playoff slots. And we have, they're doing the same thing in college basketball right now to get more P5 teams there. You've seen the same thing happen to the NIT. It's not a far cry to say, hey, you're now in the AAC again, right?
Okay.
So that to me is the choice, right? I would rather us make sure that we have a life raft into whatever the SEC Big 10 thing is going to be, right? Because essentially there's going to be a new division. That framework was talked about at this particular meeting. It's just about stripping the rights of those particular conferences through their decision making after they strip the teams that they want. I want UCF to be part of those teams because I want us to be relevant. We have a chance for a national championship. We have the chance to be a relevant football program. We look at the TV slots. Do you want to be on FS1 or do you want to be on Fox? Do you want to be on ESPN or do you want to be on ESPN2? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, if I get a national championship, I want a national. I'm gonna be honest. I don't think there's any scenario where I'm not going to take a national championship because I think that's the hardest thing to do in college football is win a national championship. I think you can say just like to the reference I made earlier. I think if we were to go to the SEC, we could be a power team because I believe in our location. I believe in the type of recruits we can get if we're access that entry. But realistically, we also could be a Florida
middle tier.
And I don't want to even be middle tier. If that means now, if we don't get a national championship, period, obviously yes. But for a national championship, I wouldn't trade middle tier for that. I would take the national championship because of the rarity. Because again, everybody, Mississippi State, they can't say they've won a national championship in football. Vandy can't say they've won a national championship in football. We would be able to say that.
We can say that now.
So here's
I mean, in the hypothetical though,
like in the or like a real natty though. So
it is a real natty.
I'm sorry, I'll always disagree with that. We can go on a whole other.
I have feelings on it too, but
we can go on another round of that. But I like your question though. I completely understand where you come from, Roger. If the only two options with no other factors are basically become irrelevant and have no chance of competing for a national championship for the rest of time or a national championship right now, then 100% I would choose what you're saying, Roger, which would be going to the SEC. So we still are a real football program and not, in D2 where no one gives a crap about us. But in my mind, if you win a national championship, I don't see how they could leave us out. How could you not bring in a national championship winning program if they strip the Big 12 and we win the national championship next year? Are they really going to exclude a team that won a national championship 2 years prior or 1 year prior? That doesn't seem realistic to me. If the hypothetical is like, no, if we win a natty, they 100% still won't take us, then yeah, I'm going to go with what you're saying. But I think winning a natty would bring unprecedented exposure, all types of stuff, and just elevate UCF into a new level and immortalize us in college football history where you'd kind of have to take us.
We would essentially we would be looked at as how you look at a blue blood because of that national championship.
Like every team's won national championship. You look at them.
No, I think blue blood is multiple natties.
Not blue blood, but you
just the way we look, like the way people still talk about Miami, you would get that, but modern day football. Like you'd get Miami was head and toes the most talented team of that era. So I think if we were to do it, it would be looked at a lot differently, especially in a world with social media, a world with all the.
Miami is a really bad example of the point you're trying to articulate because
I'm saying how people look at just that one team, that one era of Miami football, not how they're looked at.
Yeah, it's immortalized forever.
It's forever. You can't, as much as we can talk about the program, 2000 to 2003 was peak football. That's what's carrying them now. It's literally carrying them right now.
20 years later.
I don't think it's carrying them anymore.
Well, Roger, here's this. Do you think when this eventually happens, will Miami get a life raft, or are they going to be relegated to D2 or whatever?
I think they'll be relegated to D2.
I don't see how they leave Miami.
So then you're basically.
Let me put it to you this way. Last week, the Miami Herald put out an article that said, "Is it time to hang up Miami athletics?" Right?
Athletic, so, the whole every single sport.
The football, yeah.
Football.
So, yeah, football, basketball, whatever.
That's ridiculous.
It is and it isn't. Because let's be real about this.
It's not like they're the bottom of the ACC.
Hold on. Well, they haven't been relevant in football the entire time.
But it's not like they're.
Hold on, let me finish. Right. They have not been relevant since they joined the ACC until what was it, last year or the year before that they were in contention for the championship.
That was at 2018 when they beat Notre Dame. They started out 10-0, and they were number like 3 or 4, and they collapsed at the end. It was like 3 or 4 years ago, I believe. It was like the year after we went undefeated.
Yeah. So again, let's look at what the current climate is today. FSU. If anybody's going to get a life raft out, it'll be FSU and Clemson.
100%.
Right.
Yeah.
And followed up very closely by UNC, UVA. After that, there's no
taking 4 teams. You think they're only taking 4 teams in this scenario? That's it
from the ACC. Yeah.
Well, I'm saying total teams. So between
in this scenario, let's talk about the brands where they are today. Miami in their peak in the early 2000s, yeah, 100%. Miami and FSU are both being scooped up. It's not even a question, right? But today, if the SEC and Big Ten were choosing, I'm not convinced that the SEC is even going to take Florida State, to be honest, because
they're definitely taking Florida State.
No, hold on, because of Florida, right? Today, in today's climate, it depends on what the Big Ten does too, right? I would think that the FSU just became AAU, so they're a legit target for the Big Ten now. There's no more contingent states, right? So I could see, I definitely see those two going away. Everybody else in the ACC is not looked at very favorably. I don't see them
as far as a program. I'm just talking football. I know program. I'm 1,000% with you. I think every year
football either. I don't think anybody looks at Miami football the way that they did in the past.
But Roger, every single year, Miami is a preseason top 25 team, whether they deserve it or not. I mean, I think this year they're going to be a top 15 team just off of. I think they're literally getting this credibility because of that. Like, I don't think they've done anything to earn it. If it was my opinion, I think we've done more to earn a consistent top 25 team the last, 10 years. But we don't get that credibility. Why? It's not because of on the field. I truthfully think it is because of hype. I think everybody wants that old Miami back because of how it made them feel then in the early 2000s. Whether it's right, I don't agree.
It's not that Miami team anymore. They don't bring the people to the stadium. They don't have the performance on the field. The only thing that they have is recruiting. They don't have the fans. We've surpassed them. I mean, even if you look at something as esoteric as sales, they don't bring the Miami viewership. So if you start stacking up the teams, because it's a numbers game now, we've reached to the point where the Foxes of the world and the ESPNs of the world have said, hey, we're not going to pay you anymore. They're not going to take Miami.
I just don't see how they don't take I mean, the whole should they disband their athletic program? That's just ridiculous. I mean, it's not like they're.
Well, I agree. I think that's an over
feeders. I mean, they're still. I mean, yeah, they may be middle of the pack, but it's not like they're wallowing in 0-12. I mean, I just looked at their every single year since 2016. They've been ranked at some point in the year, so that shows like
how early.
I don't know, but I'm just saying like
really early.
I'm not saying they deserve it, but the fact that
to me, that's my point though. That's what I'm trying to say is every single year they're going to consistently get this hype as if they're an elite program, a top 25 program, and they're not. But why do they keep getting the benefit of the doubt? It can't just be recruiting because a lot of teams recruit.
Well, I think it is because of recruiting, because those preseason polls, and you're talking about preseason polls, not during the season polls, right?
Yeah,
those preseason polls are based off of the recruiting that's coming on and the talent on the field. Miami has had talent. They've not been able to execute. And back to your point about the article, Miami is a small private college that has like 15,000 students if you're counting both undergrads and grads, right?
Yep.
And the reason Miami dumped as much money as they did into the football program at the time was because they needed to compete for students. The Miami article point was, hey, you don't need that anymore. So, what's Miami's priorities, right? That changes when you no longer have to have athletics as the front porch of the university, right? For for academics and to drive academics. So it takes one Judy Genshaft and crater the whole particular program, or say, hey, we're just not going to take the leap and spend $20 million to pay student athletes. Stanford said the same thing.
Definitely see them. I could see them doing it. I'm not saying it.
That doesn't mean they wouldn't have any athletics. Like still a
no, but what they're talking about doing is saying, hey, kids, step back and not participate in this Power 2 program. And that goes back to the crux of my conversation. UCF always wants to and will continue to want to participate at the highest levels of college athletics. We've been striving for that for a long time. I feel like if I were the president of the university, I would rather say one Natty championship now, or the potential to have more Natty championships later.
Why wouldn't they include us if we won a Natty like next year? Why would they not include a recent because
Miami, this is a 10-year play, and again, there's only so many spots. What we have going for us that Miami doesn't is that we have 300 and some odd thousand alumni and growing 15,000 per year, right? And we're bringing the viewership numbers for Central Florida, and there's no professional sports teams outside of the Orlando Magic in Orlando. So that's why we've been called a sleeping giant for so long. If Miami can't put it together and be relevant in football, I mean, they have been relevant in basketball lately, but if they can't do it in football, I don't see Miami being picked up. I just don't see it.
I mean, I guess
I would, if I was the president, I think I agree with you. I think you have to look out for the long play. Just me, myself, as a former athlete, I would take the national championship, because I think that, I wouldn't say transcends sports, but it just, you can have that no matter what happens with any other time, because people always remember. I mean, who's won the last 30 years? There's probably been 10 to 15 different people that have won national championships.
At most, yeah.
Alabama kind of through the curve.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's something that, it is a concentrated group, realistically, that can say they've won. I played in the national championship game and won. It's a very specific and small group out of the hundreds of teams in college. I don't know. That's just the athlete to me. I do agree with you, though, Roger. The president, if I was the president and looking out for the best interests of UCF, yes, I would trade a guarantee for a possibility.
I mean, I guess my thought behind, I'm not looking at for me, the national championship wouldn't be about, oh, it's going to make me super happy as a fan. It's just my opinion in this hypothetical is that that would incentive. If you're already talking about UCF having these advantages of being a sleeping giant and being in Orlando and one pro team, adding a national championship to all of that, I just don't see how
that's a lock. That's a lock.
That's, to me, is a lock. Then if they already have these inherent advantages, you add a Natty, it would be very hard to argue against it. So forget me as a fan and being happy about the short term. I think that short-term championship would lead to the long-term thing you're talking about. I mean, you may disagree, which is understandable, but that's just, I'm not doing it because, I want a Natty.
It was Natty now versus Power 2 later.
What?
It was a trade.
The question was Natty now or Power 2 later.
So you're saying that I can't add what I just added in, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, then I'm choosing Power 2. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That was a long way to get there. But that's my view. That's my view on it. I'd much rather everything that we do has to be towards, our goal our near-term goal should be to get as high as we can in the Big 12 and compete for championships, because we want to be relevant in 10 years when this turns around and the Power 2's faucets completely get turned off.
Here's another question I'll ask, a second question. Would you trade a Natty in the now for, you get to be in the Power 2, but we don't ever play for a national championship, and we're pretty much not really close. We hover around the middle for the end of time.
Alan?
It's a great question. Well, I guess, do I do I only know about that happening like in the moment when I make the decision, and then my memory gets wiped once it happens, and then so I won't know what's going to happen.
If you could
putting asterisks on it.
If you could see into the future, like you can take the national championship now, or you can trade in the national championship, but you will become Mississippi State.
I think in that scenario, I would choose still choose the Roger Big Two scenario, because even if we're never going to win a national championship, the alternative of being not in the Big Two, you're never going to win a national championship anyway. So you might as well at least still be playing in a national sense and all that. So you're saying
trade a guaranteed national championship. Like, yeah, you might not ever win a national championship again, but you can say, and you will have won a national championship.
But then they're not. Then they're relegated if they win the national championship.
Yeah, then they'd be relegated. Like, so, like, say you're in your hypothetical, we win the national championship next year, but we never get to the Power Two. We're just relegated to whatever it will become.
Right.
Or we don't win the national championship, but we make it to the Power Two, but we are just a middling team for the rest of time.
I would choose the middling team. Yeah, I would choose the middling team, because at least you're still in college football. If you're in D2, you're not like a real team. I mean, that's so I would just I get that you never win it. I would just accept the heartbreak of that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just, because at least you're still playing in real games, big games, and like I'd rather be that than be, I don't know, like Wolford State or something like that. Yeah. So
I get what you're saying. I get that.
Hey, don't disrespect Slippery Rock, okay?
I just honestly, that name, I don't even know where that came from. I just somehow thought of that name.
Well, there is a Wofford.
Wofford.
WOFFORD. It's not a state.
Something like that.
There's not a state, but there is a Wofford. And there is a Slippery Rock.
Would you do?
Yeah, 100%. Like I listen. Give me big time college football, screaming fans, being relevant, being known as a national brand.
Yep.
Give me that experience versus being in the AAC again 100 times of the week. Because if you're in the AAC, you're going to lose those fans. You're going to turn into Miami. You're going to turn into Tulane, who used to fill 60,000 people stadiums in the SEC back in the 60s and 70s when they were relevant, and then got out of the SEC. And you see what they are today, and they build a 30,000 person stadium or less. Give me that. Give me relevance. Give me the ability to talk, since we're a clean show. Give me the ability to have that weekend experience every year where, hey, even if it's winning 8 games a year or 7 games a year, at least I'm going to a game thinking I can win every game, and I'm playing big time college football. Sorry. That's my.
I understand that point. Yeah. That makes sense. You're almost trading. You would essentially be trading a guaranteed championship for just relevance, almost relevance.
Like relevance. You'd be relevant for a point in time with that championship, but let's look at these schools like ECU.
You go back to Miami though. Like that's kind of Trey, your scenario of like winning a national and never winning again. That's kind of like maybe Miami will win again, but it doesn't feel like they'll make it. I mean, I know they won more than one. They've won like 5, but like they may never win again. So
yeah, I agree. Basically, would you want to be Mississippi State or would you want to be Miami? I think that's a bigger conversation.
That's a bigger one.
That's a tougher decision, in my opinion. That's a tough decision.
In that one, I'm choosing Miami because the pure like joy and amazingness.
There's a nostalgia to that team.
You're thinking about Miami where it is today. I don't think it's going to be in a Power 2.
Okay,
that's what we're saying.
Even in that scenario, there's nothing that convinced me to like. It already happened for them, so it's not a hypothetical. They won 5 championships. I think if you ask any, like, you go to Miami and go, hey, look, we're going to take away all 5 of your natties, and then in that scenario, you can go get a life raft. No way. Like, you can't take away 5 natties, that 01 season, all the amazing things that happened. Like, that's just too much history to take away. One random season, I could deal with that, but I wouldn't take away 5 natties for in that scenario.
All right. So Alan's going to try to barter the number of natties he has to give up to be relevant.
Well, I'm just saying that they already happened, not like.
I think I think like again, we're speaking from a perspective of like I think if we were to, because I look at the 2017 season that year and even the 2018 year, that stretch of time, I don't think you guys would trade that stretch of time to be relevant in the SEC. I don't think people would make that trade. That's not even relevant would you trade? Here's the best question right now. Would you trade 2017, 2018 UCF peak to be Mississippi State?
Oof, that's tough too.
Well, it's only tough because we still have the opportunity to rise above where we are today. Now, if you said, hey, you stay where you are today, or you're Mississippi State, or you have the 2017, 2018 season, give me 2013 and give me Mississippi State. I love you, Trey, and I love that. I mean, you're in our show.
I was more so saying like you just not get rid of because it's just hypotheticals, but like just those prime, because I think this is how kind of what you're saying, Alan, is there is a nostalgia to these teams. Even like we're going to talk about these teams, and not just because I played on it, but 10 years from now, unless these teams, which I hope they do, go out and do what we did and go undefeated and go win a real national championship, that nostalgia carries our program because of
eliminating history is a whole different argument, because Roger's argument was winning a hypothetical natty in the future. Eliminating our history, that's a completely separate argument. You know what I mean? Like that would be tougher in my mind than a hypothetical future championship that hasn't happened, that I haven't experienced yet. It's like you're wiping away like something I've already experienced.
The reason I say it like that is because I know how we felt in those 2017-18 seasons. I couldn't imagine going into the college football playoff and winning a national championship. I can't imagine how UCF fans would.
Right.
Like we were unbearable with the controversial national championship.
We're still unbearable. What are you talking about? We never stopped being, but we're not bearable.
I agree. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I think because the runs aren't as often, that when it happens like that, you cherish those kind of teams. You cherish those kind of moments. So I don't know. I think would I rather that than Mississippi State? That's a question. I don't know. Obviously, if I'm the president, I'm taking Mississippi State just financially, and it makes sense. But just as my,
I think of it this way. I think of it this way. I experienced 2017 and 2018 with my kids. Right? They were at the games, the home games. They weren't in the away game. Well, Maryland. My son was with me in Maryland when we went to the Maryland game. We experienced that together. Now, if the next generation or their generation after that can't experience that, or is relegated to, the cows, right? The cows, right? I'm sorry. I'd rather have the opportunity to experience big time football and winning at a high level, even if it's an 8-win season every year. I'd rather experience that than the 2017 to 2018 run if my kids and their kids will never experience big time football.
That's fair. Here's a twist on it. Okay.
Oh boy, a twist.
All right. So we just talked about how Miami won 5 championships, and you wouldn't want to erase that nostalgia or that history. What happens if UCF could go, because you said, Roger, this, Big Two thing could happen in about 10 years. What happens over the next 10 years? UCF wins 5 national championships, but they still get relegated for whatever reason. What about in that scenario? Would you trade 10 years of just pure elation where we win 5 natties for basically being Mississippi State in the 10 years from now?
Question for you, I said I'm taking the one.
My answer is the same. My answer is the same because look, to me, it's the same scenario. I would 100% give up national championships for relevance. I'm sorry. Like if I can't,
five's a lot. Five's a lot,
dude. This is as a former competitor, right? You know this, Trey. Like I compete in the business world. I competed on the field when I was playing there. I competed on the court. Like I'm a very competitive person. I even compete when I'm doing CrossFit. I got to be the number one with the amount of time and the number of calories burned and the number of reps done and miles ran and everything else. I'm a very competitive person. But if I can't even get to the field to compete on something that's relevant, I'm sorry, I don't. It's like if you ask me, okay, I made this choice. I could have went and played for Army in college. Full ride scholarship, could have played football for Army. I chose an engineering degree that I thought that I would have the opportunity to be an engineer and work on spacecraft, right? As competitive as I am, I chose that. Now, the reason I chose that, would that have been different? And if I would have been starting for a Florida team or somewhere else, I may have considered it, right? But this is the same decision that people are going to make as athletes or student athletes later on. Yeah, there's something about getting on the field and making those memories. But if I don't make it at UCF and now I have to go JUCO or something like that, would I continue to put the time, effort that it takes to be a student athlete or an athlete in general at that level to continue to do it? I don't think that I would. And I think that's ultimately what's going to, because it's 3 years of memories versus the rest of your life.
But your relevance argument is interesting because you say, all right, we'll be basically Mississippi State or whatever. But
I don't think they're relevant. That's just me.
Exactly.
I don't think
they're relevant.
Say,
Vanderbilt isn't relevant, even though they're in the SEC. They're not relevant. So you're playing big time college football, but that doesn't mean you're relevant. You're just
but Vanderbilt is less than relevant. It's like you're good. That's the equivalent of the G5 team that we do a bye game with when you're in the SEC.
But relevance
is only for football, because baseball they are 100% relevant.
Yeah,
but I'm saying
other sports they are too.
But even if you're
that's why I said Mississippi State. I don't think they're Vandy.
But they're not relevant. Mississippi State's not relevant. No one's going in.
That's not a team we talk about. That's not a team that is brand-wise a national brand. Yeah, they're in the SEC, but they are predicted to be a middle-of-the-pack SEC team every single year. There's nobody in the country will say, I think Mississippi State can win the SEC. I don't even think they think
they still bring 60 to 70,000 fans and have great tailgates.
No, listen, I get that. I'm not saying that. That's what I'm saying. If that's the decision maker, then by all means. I'm just saying I'm not trading 5-year national championships in 10 years. I think that relevance would supersede everything. Like I think you could have that forever. I'm definitely not trading 5 national championships.
Because if you're a 7-win team every year in the Big Ten or the SEC, you are irrelevant. No, you're not competing for the conference. You're not competing for a national. You're not nationally ranked. You're irrelevant. You're relevant.
You're relevant in the sense that, yes, you have 60,000, 70,000 fans and you're playing UGA. You're playing all the real relevant teams. You get to play them and you get to say, hey, we had a chance to beat them, but really you didn't. But
you saw schools make that choice already.
I agree.
Look at what happened with Texas. Look at what happened with Oklahoma. Look at what happened with, and that's just the Big 12 examples.
What do you mean?
Look at Colorado. Look at, look at Texas A&M. Look at like any of these schools that have really moved around, for Penn State for a while. Penn State wanted to join the Big East. The Big East turned them down.
Wait, so you're saying these schools made what decision already? Sorry, I didn't
understand. They made the decision to go play in the SEC, a much tougher conference, versus being the top dog in their own conference.
That's an extremely fair counterpoint. Yep.
But again, I guess we're really just seeing relevance different. Like I think relevance is truly competing for national championship, not just by default of me being in a conference, I'm competing for a national championship.
By default you are. And remember, they are upping the amount of slots, but they're also upping the amount of teams that are going to make the playoffs.
Oh, of course. But okay. So do you think Vandy, like, honestly, are they a national championship competitor?
No.
In football.
Today, or could they be?
I don't think they'll ever be. I don't think they'll ever be.
They could be if the admin threw their money around, because Vandy has a ton of money.
Well, yeah, that's another ripple.
Look what happened. Okay, look, Vandy's a perfect example, Trey. No, but let's use your example. James Franklin was at Vandy. He was making noise. You went to go visit there and was considering going there at that time.
Mm-hmm.
What was the noise around Vandy at that time? They were up and coming, and they could potentially contend.
And you still didn't choose to go there.
No, he didn't, because James Franklin was leaving.
He ended up leaving to Penn State. But I think James Franklin left to Penn State because he knows there's a glass
he can't
ceiling.
compete at Vandy.
There's
it's a stepping stone to Penn State.
You can have one-off seasons. Like I'm not saying like Mississippi State. I think in 2014, my freshman year, they were the number 1 team in the country. Dak Prescott.
Yeah, Dak Prescott.
Granted, that was the one-off year. 10 years from now, there's been no real national championship competition for them, which to me, that's why they're not really a relevant team.
Let's look at the Cows. We were number 2. We were number 2 in a Power 5 or quote unquote Power 6 or BCS conference at the time. We were number 2 and we were relevant. Now they're in the ACC or AAC and the laughing stock of the AAC. Would you rather be the Cows?
I wouldn't trade it for that.
Have that number 2 or championship versus being where they are today?
Roger. We are not about to downplay number 2 in the country.
No, but I'm saying,
yeah, it's completely different.
It's an analog though, and here's why I'm saying this. One, they were in a conference that was relevant where they could even achieve number 2, right? Mm-hmm. Number 1. Mm-hmm. Number 2, if we're talking about a championship, we're talking about the height of what that program would ever be, right? Versus getting downgraded to what the AAC is now, which is Conference USA 2.0, and doing terribly in that conference. Now, they've made some steps to be middle of the road, like 6-6 in that conference now. But even then, that's not really saying anything because Houston, Cincy, and we left, right? But at the end of the day, and this is not a poo-poo on the moose segment, I'm just saying it's an analog because they hit their peak relevance, which for us would be the equivalent of a national championship. And now they're a foregone conclusion that nobody thinks about.
But it's not the same. The number 2 isn't the same as a Natty.
Because nobody thinks about them is because there's a million teams that have been number 2 in the country. Like, and that's where like there's a different, like plenty of teams have been number 2 in the country and nobody remembers them.
What about Georgia Tech? They won national championships. Nobody talks about Georgia Tech anymore. And as soon as the ACC implodes, they went from an SEC team with national championships to a middle of the pack ACC team that's going to get left behind and not part of the Power 2. They're not even looked at as a relevant part of Power 2, as much history as Georgia Tech has had. They won a championship with George O'Leary there.
Did they?
Yes.
I get your point. Trust me, I do get your point. I don't know how. I don't know. I don't think we look back at that Georgia Tech team, and maybe that's UCF could have been in that situation. Like maybe they don't look back. The reason I say it is because I think even our 2017, 2018 team is looked back more fondly than that national championship Georgia Tech team, just from social media. Like I think people hold that in higher regard than. You could go ask Georgia Tech fans when was the last, like, who do you know that remember that UCF team? Yeah. Do you remember the 1990 Georgia Tech National Championship? Maybe they might, but I just think just social media has boosted us to, a level of what I think that has a play on it. I think
now, and I think that's why I was saying short term versus long term. How many of the only reason like the 2017 and 2018 teams are going to be remembered going forward, right? Is because of that Natty championship argument, right? Think about Boise State and where Boise State is today. They had undefeated teams. They won big games. They didn't have that Natty championship argument. They didn't have that argument, right? They went undefeated, but nobody argued that they were a national champion at the time, right? They took the, hey, ho-hum, we know our place kind of argument, right? Now look at Boise State. They're in the Mountain West Conference. They're not going to move up. They're not looked at like they were before. They were the darlings and the gold standard for a long time of G5 football. Nobody cares anymore.
I get what you're saying about the relevance and caring and all that. I mean, 5 national championships, that hypothetical, that would be very hard to turn down. But I agree with your argument at a, on a certain level for sure. I guess the thing about relevance is it's all relevant because
what kind of relevance?
Oh, we're getting football philosophical now.
Because it's funny. We talk about all these, it's funny, even like whoever gets the lifeline and plus the current Big Ten and SEC members, realistically, it's not even like people that are in the top 5 of those it's really only like, if you think about it, like 8 or 9 teams that are actually relevant on any given year, and you have a couple one-offs. But if you really think, it's just like what you said, Trey, how many national championship teams have there been in the last 30 years? There's realistically in college football, there's at most realistically like 3 or 4 relevant teams at any given year. So I guess that's how it's always been. So if I guess it would be better to have the lifeline of being there. But I mean, yeah, because I think even if you're like the number, 15 team, you're still really not that relevant. It's better than like not being ranked. But like when you talk about true relevance, like the one that that everyone's covering, the one that actually has a chance, the one that's getting the best recruits, it's literally only about 10 teams. So like, I guess it's, it's a matter of, do you want to, it's still, I guess, better than being USF. Of course it is, but
we don't say that. We don't say that word on this podcast. We say
another example
in my head.
Would you want to be Florida right now? Would you rather be in the Big 12 or not in the Big 12, in the Power 2, not Power 2? Would you rather be, would you care if we were in the Power 2 and our program became what Florida is right now? Would you be happy with that?
Well, he's saying yes, of course. Yeah, that's what the whole thing is, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna be honest. We can. I don't know. I don't think I want that.
Look, do I like where Florida is? No, but you're talking about them every year, and they're playing in big time games, and they've got screaming fans and a great tailgate.
It's 1,000% better than being in Florida or even Vanderbilt. It still is better than being relegated to whatever the new G5 or whatever you want to call it is. I agree with you 100% on there, Roger. Like, I mean, the original argument was more about national championship, but if we're talking about just strictly like, would I want to be Vanderbilt or Mississippi State versus USF in 10 years that could be in the D2? No, of course I'm going to choose Vanderbilt, Mississippi State, because at least there's something there. It's you're not winning natties.
Or Stanford, for that matter. Stanford won a national championship in football before, and look where they're at today. And they're not going to be in the Power 2. And how venerated was Stanford's brand for a long time, up until probably about 10 years ago.
But basically every team that's ever won a national championship is going to be in that Big 2, maybe other than Georgia Tech and I guess Stanford. I mean, I would think who else? Florida State and Clemson are 100% getting in.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to really have a cutoff, but like those
that's
teams,
the whole thing, though. That's the whole.
Like Stanford's national championship was what, 50 years ago? I don't know a lot.
Alan, our stats guy, will figure that out for us here shortly.
But also, I think you have to. Was it a real national championship, or was it one of the things like AP consensus share? Like, because like Alabama's national, or like those are real ones, like where it's undisputed. Like back in the day in college football,
Alabama claims championships where they had 6 wins.
Agreed. And I used to always use that argument when people would make fun of UCF, that the claimed national championship is a thing that's been going on in college football history forever. But I'm talking about like, did Stanford have one of the? But Alabama has also had real ones. Yes, they have the claimed BS ones, but did Stanford have like an actual, 2000 and whenever last time Alabama won, like one of those national championships, or was it like, they were 10-3 and they had some BS kind of national?
Let me put it to you this way: they've got 2. They've got one in 1920 and one in 1940.
So were those
actually 1926 and 1940, and one? And do you know? Okay, so I'm going to take Josh's place this week. Which famous coach that you should know in football lore that still today resonates was their coach at that particular time? Someone that you would know every day, especially in the high school ranks.
Obviously, he's dead, right?
Yeah. Well, 1926 or 1940.
Oh, yeah. I forgot you said that. Okay. I don't know. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Me either.
Pop Warner.
Oh, sick.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So
I want to see their national championship that record for those 2 years. If they have more than one loss, I don't think that shouldn't be like considered they were a national championship winning team.
And I guess I'm more so looking at like just I don't consider Stanford a blue blood in a sense.
They were
Like, yeah,
10-0. They were 10-0-1 in 1926.
yeah, but I mean, they were playing football without helmets in 1926. I don't count that as football.
And do you know who they played and tied for that one?
Who?
Alabama.
So, but I do think there kind of has to be a cutoff. Like, I don't think you could look in the same light of 1926
10-0 and single individual champions in 1940.
They're what?
They were the sole champions in 1940.
No, that's fair. But what I don't look at their 1926 championship in the same light as I look at 2001 Miami's, for example. Like, because Miami's is a long.
Well, what happens what happens in 2086? In the national championship there. If you win the championship,
in 10 years,
I don't look at it the same light because it's not the same thing. And blah, blah, blah.
But this whole thing's happening in 10 years from now. So a 2020 championship in 10 years from now is definitely more relevant than a 1926 one.
It won't be.
I think 80 years. If we stretch it from 80 years, I agree. I don't. That would just be
this whole.
That's what I'm saying.
That's a whole different generate. Like. That's
or look at it. And this isn't a Natty champion, but let's talk about a contention in national championships. ECU used to be a football team that competed for national championships. Look who they are now. Do you want that for your program? I mean, Dowdy, they used to have huge $50,000 fan games every game. They were sold out. Now they might get 25 or 30,000 at most. Do you want that for UCF football? I would rather be Mississippi State, have 60,000, 70,000 screaming fans than have that national championship that's just going to be forgotten eventually anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it would be forgotten eventually in like 80 years if UCF is in the division.
Yeah, but we forget everything. We don't forget everything then. Everybody I don't think anybody knows what was going on. I mean, we know, but it's like we don't really have a affinity for football in the 1940s. We don't have that was such a great team. That's just we don't think that way.
And Stanford didn't sustain it either, so it's like,
well, they did. They had a lot of winning seasons. They played for a lot of championships. They just didn't win another one.
Right. I mean,
Stanford football was relevant over the years.
They were relevant with Harbaugh, yeah, for sure. I mean.
That was a recent one, but even before that, they were relevant.
It's tough choices.
Well, I'll be dead in 2080, so I'll be dead in 2080, so I won't care.
You're gonna live to 165. Come on. All right, but that's my point too. I'd rather not.
That was a good spirited debate there.
I think it was, but you proved my point too. I'd rather my kids and my kids go to UCF football games and have them be relevant than trade that for a championship that I got to enjoy.
Relevant.
Yeah, it's relevant with an asterisk, but it's still better than the
playing at the highest level of college football. Let's put it down.
That's fair.
So, all right. I think we've beat that horse to death. We've had Alan's philosophy on football. We've had Alan's asterisk. We have Trey disrespect himself and then respect himself. We've been all over the place. And he even hypothesized for us. So we've honestly, that was a great conversation. I think that's worthy. That snippet of conversation is worthy even of its own podcast if we really got down to it. So, all right. We need a 2017 Natty debate for one show.
We need it. Especially
we gotta wait. We gotta wait for the entire team to be in here for one of those.
That's fair.
If we have one of those soon, let's do that. All right. That being said, it's almost time to wrap the show. But before we do that, Alan, do you have an oxymoronic stat of the week for us this week?
No, I'm just kidding. I got one.
It's like nobody's playing.
I just wanted to say that just to see a reaction for a second. So I wanted to just talk about. I mean, there's not much going on right now, as you know, in UCF football world. But I wanted to talk a little bit about recruiting, and actually it was earlier in the show, but it was a
We
good
lost
point.
Trey. Trey was like, I'm done. I'm finished.
Oh, bye, Trey. Well, you had brought up that, having a top 60 or top 50 Florida recruit is, it's like having one of the top, one of the best, obviously best recruiting states in the country. And that means they're a guy, they're a dog, right? If they're a top 50 player in Florida. So I wanted to, it's been obviously discussed, and we talked on the shows that Gus Malzahn has focused his recruiting efforts in the state of Florida primarily, and also Georgia. But I just wanted to talk about the big difference in disparity between Heupel and Gus, just to show like how much it matters in the recruiting rankings, how much it matters in just relevance of getting like, the best of the best players, and how much it impacts the field. We all know that Heupel went away from, Florida recruiting, even went to your land there, Germany, to get a couple of recruits. One who's still on the team, Paul Rubel. But
who is expected to get a lot of snaps this year.
No, that was a great find. But overall, in the 4 recruiting classes that Josh Heupel had, and now Gus has had 4, so I was able to kind of make it equal here. Heupel had 86 high school commits that signed their letter of intent. And 44 out of 86 came from Florida, which is 51%. Now, Gus Malzahn in the last 4 years since he's been here has had 75% of his recruits come from Florida. And the total number is actually 39. So he only had 14 less Florida recruits despite, and has only had 53 signed high school, because obviously one being this class isn't finished yet, and also with the transfer portal, you're having less high school. But he only had 14 less Florida recruits despite having 35 less overall recruits. And that's why I did the percentage of 51 versus 74%. So when I think that's such a relevant stat, because when we look back at this time period, in maybe 10 years or whatever, and, obviously Gus Malzahn's story is still being written. I think, you'll look at the recruits that he got in high school, the guys that became pillars of some of the teams, whether it's, John Walker, whoever the case may be. And I think we'll be able to really pinpoint why. And that's because of the Florida recruits. Obviously, Heupel had that 2018 year, but that was none of his recruits. So when we look at the years that he had following that were less than stellar, we can point to his recruiting classes, and a lot of them were really from all over, and not like, we're not talking, he got a bunch from Texas or California. I mean, there was a bunch of random states in there. If you really go back and look. Arizona, which isn't a bad state, but like Arizona, there was Colorado, there was like, I think even one from like North Dakota, a couple in the Midwest that, just aren't like known for being football powerhouses. So, I mean, I guess it's fairly obvious to say that, but it is just interesting to see that discrepancy, that why would a Florida school like UCF, doesn't matter if you can only get 2- and 3-star recruits, there was no reason Josh Heupel should have went. I even broke it down by class. His last class, he only had a total of 5 kids from the state of Florida in the entire class of 18. The least that Malzahn has had is 10. And percentage-wise, that's still very big, because most of the classes have been around 15 or 16.
Well,
some of Heupel's,
what's crazy about that is he had Randy Shannon on staff.
Right, who's like Mr. Florida. So, and when you look at that, it's very bizarre to look at those numbers. And some of Heupel's classes were, when you talk about 5, he had some of those classes were in the 20s, like mid 20s, like 23, 24, 25. So you're talking about 20% of the class being Florida when you're in the biggest hotbed. I'm not saying he could go and recruit against Florida State at the time, but there was no reason he couldn't do what Scott Frost did and getting, low 3-star, mid 3-star recruits in Florida. So it's just so interesting, that disparity. I mean, he's doing good at Tennessee and all that, but I think we can look back at that.
He's also not doing the recruiting in Tennessee either.
Exactly. So I think it shows, like, when UCF and Tennessee fans get in little battles, like, and they say like, thank you for him. And we say the same thing back. Thank you. Because Tennessee recruits itself, and he may be a great X's and O's guy, but that recruiting strategy I thought was the biggest fumble that any UCF coach has ever made in the history of UCF football. I mean,
Wow.
you could dismiss things about O'Leary, whatever, but when you talk about every Florida coach or every UCF coach that I'm aware of, that I know of, they've always recruited Florida. It doesn't matter if they're 2-star, 3-star, what, it doesn't matter the quality. They always recruited Florida.
Well, Florida 3-star is different than a Nebraska 3-star.
And that's why UCF has always had some level of success. Even if it was in Conference USA, whatever, they're winning 10 games, whatever, because they had the best recruits. You've said that before, Roger. We've always kind of had the recruiting edge, and it's because of Florida. So when you look at UCF's massive decline, yes, we weren't going to maintain undefeated every year, but they dropped, from those years to noticeably a lot worse. And I would have to, this would be a good, I don't even know how many of Heupel's players have even gone to the NFL. I think high school wise, I'm not sure. I know, the Tay Gowan, for example, was drafted. That was a transfer. So I don't even know if any of Heupel's high school recruits have been drafted. Maybe like one or two. So that's just kind of a, interesting footnote in UCF history.
Yeah. I mean, the big thing there, he just, not only did he not recruit Florida, I just don't think he had a solid footing in Florida he was only here for a couple of years, so he didn't really have any relationships with the Florida schools. And then on top of that, Randy Shannon was his connection to Florida. And when
he should have been automatic.
Yeah. When he was, that relationship wasn't great. So I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't sour some of that. If Randy Shannon didn't sour some of that, some of those relationships there as well. So, but at the end of the day, I think it is a stark contrast. And, it's funny you mentioned the Josh Heupel and UCF fans. I mean, Auburn did that for a while when Gus left, and then now all of a sudden they're clamoring for more Gus Malzahn. So I don't think we'll have the same thing with Heupel, but at the end of the day, every team seems to have that. So, all right. That was a good one. I think it's time to close this one out. Believe it or not, because of our spirited conversation around Natty Championships versus Power 2, we've made it to an hour and 46 minutes without half of our team and Nobra. So, I think this was a fun one. I think honestly that 2017 debate might be fun. It's kind of like when Ben and I get in debates about Dawkins. We'll definitely do that going forward. UCF though, my takeaways from this show this week is UCF is definitely becoming the power team that we wanted to. Our revenue is going up. We are frugal, and we're not going to end up with $60,000, $70,000 or $1 million facilities that we're not going to have the money for because money's been cut back because of this $20 million that's going to go to student athletes and all of that other stuff. So at the end of the day, I think we're in a good position. I think we're no matter what happens athletically in the short term, I think we're, as a program, going the right direction. Kudos to Terry Mahajer for being fiscally responsible and setting us up to a point where we'll be able to do the things we want to do, not be in like an SEC team or Washington, who's building a $800 million stadium. But we are in a position to continue to rise both financially and as a program. So excited for that. Excited for the 2017 season debate, and go Knights and
charge on.
All right, charge on, baby. I guess I have to fill the air since we're missing our famous, infamous rapper who's eating ice cream somewhere.